You're about to discover how a 16-year-old bookkeeper became the richest human being in modern history. Not by luck, not by inheritance, by understanding one principle that 99% of people completely miss. John D. Rockefeller died worth over $400 billion in today's dollars. That's more than Bezos, Musk, and Gates combined. But here's what terrifies the establishment. He started with nothing and built his empire using a strategy so powerful, so replicable, that if everyone understood it, the entire economic structure would collapse. In the next few minutes, you'll see exactly how he did it. But I'm warning you, once you see what Rockefeller saw, you can't unsee it. You'll look at every business, every transaction, every economic interaction completely differently. And you'll realize that poverty isn't an accident. It's a choice made by people who refuse to see what's right in front of them. Rockefeller said it himself. I would rather earn 1% off 100 people's efforts than 100% of my own efforts. If that sentence just confused you, you're exactly why this video exists. Let's fix that. John D. Rockefeller was born in 1839 in upstate New York. To a con artist father who abandoned the family for months at a time, and a deeply religious mother who kept the family together through sheer will. They were poor, not struggling middle class, actually poor. His father sold fake cancer cures and called himself a doctor despite having zero medical training. This is the environment Rockefeller grew up in. Chaos, uncertainty, poverty, and a father who taught him that most people are marks waiting to be exploited. But his mother taught him something different. Discipline, frugality, and meticulous record-keeping. These two opposing forces created something unique. Rockefeller learned to see people as his father did, as resources to be utilized, but to operate with his mother's discipline and long-term thinking. At 16, he got a job as a bookkeeper making 50 cents a day. And this is where most people miss the entire story. They think Rockefeller got lucky in oil. Wrong. Rockefeller succeeded in oil because he had already mastered something far more important. He understood systems. While other bookkeepers just recorded numbers, Rockefeller studied them. He saw patterns. He noticed that businesses failed not because of bad products, but because of bad systems. Inefficient processes, waste, lack of control over supply chains, dependency on others. He realized that profit wasn't about working harder. It was about controlling more of the value chain. Let's pause here because this is the moment everything changes. Most people think business is about having a good product or service. That's what employees think. Rockefeller understood that business is about control. Control of resources, control of distribution, control of pricing, control of competition. Let me show you exactly what this means. In 1859, oil was discovered in Pennsylvania. Everyone rushed in to drill. Thousands of wildcatters, all competing, all trying to get rich quick. Total chaos. Oil prices swung wildly. 1 month oil was $20 a barrel. Next month it was 10 cents. Nobody could plan. Nobody could build sustainable businesses. It was gambling, not business. Rockefeller watched this and saw something nobody else saw. He saw that drilling for oil was the worst part of the business. High risk, high capital investment, completely dependent on geology and luck. But refining oil, that was different. Refineries required systems, efficiency, economies of scale. And once you controlled refining, you controlled everything. Drillers needed you to buy their oil. Consumers needed you to provide refined products. You were the choke point. So while everyone else rushed to drill, Rockefeller built refineries. But he didn't just build refineries. He built the most efficient refineries in the world through obsessive optimization of every single process. Here's where it gets brilliant. Rockefeller negotiated secret deals with railroads. He said, I'll give you all my shipping business, which is massive and guaranteed if you give me rates 75% lower than my competitors. Railroads agreed because guaranteed volume was worth more than higher rates from unreliable shippers. Suddenly, Rockefeller could refine oil and ship it for a fraction of what competitors paid. His costs were so low, he could sell refined oil cheaper than competitors could produce it. Let that sink in. His selling price was below their cost. Competitors couldn't compete. They went bankrupt or sold to him at pennies on the dollar. Within a few years, Rockefeller controlled 90% of oil refining in America. 90%. He created a monopoly not through better products, but through better systems and ruthless control of the economics. And once he had that control, he could dictate terms to everyone. Drillers sold to him at his price or couldn't sell at all. Consumers bought from him at his price or went without. He was the system. Now here's what nobody teaches you about this story. People say Rockefeller was evil, a robber baron, a monopolist who crushed competition. All true. But they miss the lesson. Rockefeller understood something profound about power. Power comes from making yourself indispensable while making others dependent. He didn't just participate in the oil industry. He became the oil industry. Every participant needed him more than he needed any of them. This is the principle that separates the wealthy from the poor. Poor people trade time for money in systems controlled by others. Middle-class people optimize their position within systems controlled by others. Wealthy people build and control the systems themselves. Rockefeller never traded time for money after age 20. He built systems and took percentages of everyone else's efforts. 1% of 100 people made him richer than 100% of his own work ever could. Let's make this concrete with numbers because math doesn't lie. In 1870, Rockefeller's wealth was about $1 million. Significant, but not extraordinary. By 1880, just 10 years later, he was worth $20 million. By 1900, $200 million. By his death in 1937, adjusted for inflation, over $400 billion. How? Compound growth of controlled systems. Every year, his refineries processed more oil. Every year, his percentage of the market grew. Every year, his cost advantages increased through economies of scale. It wasn't linear growth where you add the same amount each year. It was exponential growth where the growth itself grows. This is what ownership of systems creates. Your wealth isn't tied to your hours or your effort. It's tied to the value flowing through systems you control. Rockefeller could take a month off and make more money than he would working 24 hours a day because the system worked without him. But here's the part that makes people uncomfortable. Rockefeller was ruthless. When competitors wouldn't sell to him, he would drop prices below cost until they went bankrupt, then buy their assets for nothing. When railroads tried to charge him more, he threatened to build his own railway. When workers demanded higher wages, he broke unions without hesitation. He saw business as war, and in war you don't play fair. You win, period. Now, you might find this morally repugnant. That's fine. But understand this. While you're worried about being nice, someone else is building systems that will control your economic destiny. You don't have to be as ruthless as Rockefeller. But you need to understand that the game he was playing is the same game being played today. Amazon doesn't compete with bookstores. It made bookstores irrelevant by controlling distribution. Google doesn't compete for attention. It became the gateway to all information. Facebook doesn't compete for your time. It became the infrastructure of social connection. These companies studied Rockefeller whether they admit it or not. They understand that winning isn't about being better in your category. It's about making your category irrelevant by controlling a larger system. Let's talk about leverage, because this is the mechanism that makes everything work. Rockefeller understood 3 types of leverage that multiplied his power infinitely. First, capital leverage. He used other people's money to fund expansion. Banks gave him loans at favorable rates because he was a sure bet. He took that capital, bought competitors, increased market share, generated more profit, paid back loans, and repeated. Each cycle made him stronger and gave him access to more capital on better terms. Second, labor leverage. He employed thousands of people. Each person generated value, and he captured a percentage. 100 workers generating $10 of profit each gave him $1,000 while he slept. Scale this to 10,000 workers, and you see how wealth explodes. Third, system leverage. He built processes, supply chains, distribution networks that operated with minimal oversight. The system itself became an asset that generated value automatically. These three types of leverage working together create what economists call increasing returns to scale. The bigger you get, the more efficient you become. The more efficient you become, the bigger you get. It's a virtuous cycle that's almost impossible to stop once it starts. Now let's get into the psychology, because this is where most people fail even when they understand the strategy. Rockefeller had psychological traits that are teachable but rarely taught. First, extreme delayed gratification. He lived far below his means for decades while building his empire. His first house was modest. His clothes were simple. He didn't buy luxuries until he was already unimaginably wealthy. Why? Because every dollar spent on consumption was a dollar not working in his system. He calculated that a dollar invested in his business would become $10, then $100 through compound growth. Spending that dollar on a fancy dinner meant sacrificing the 100 it would become. Most people cannot think this way. They earn a bit more and immediately upgrade lifestyle. Rockefeller upgraded his system and kept lifestyle static. Second, emotional detachment from outcomes. When competitors failed and lost everything, Rockefeller felt nothing. When workers went on strike, he felt nothing. When journalists called him a monster, he felt nothing. He saw business as a game with rules, and emotions were irrelevant to rules. This is sociopathic to some people. To Rockefeller, it was rational. Emotions cloud judgment. Remove emotions. See reality clearly. Make optimal decisions. Third, long-term thinking that bordered on generational. He wasn't building wealth for himself. He was building a dynasty that would last centuries. His decisions were made with a 50 to 100-year time horizon. Most people can't think past next month. This difference in time horizon alone explains most wealth disparity. Here's a specific example that shows how Rockefeller thought differently. In the 1870s, there was a massive oil glut. Too much supply, prices collapsed. Most refiners were panicking, shutting down, trying to survive. Rockefeller did the opposite. He expanded. He bought more refineries at bankruptcy prices. He increased production when everyone else decreased. Why? Because he knew the glut was temporary. Demand would eventually catch up to supply. And when it did, whoever controlled the most capacity would control the entire market. Everyone else was playing the short-term game of survival. Rockefeller was playing the long-term game of domination. When the market recovered, he owned everything. This pattern repeated throughout his career. Crisis hits, everyone panics, Rockefeller expands. Every crisis made him stronger because he had capital reserves and psychological fortitude that others lacked. This is the ultimate lesson. Wealth is transferred from the panicked to the patient during every crisis. If you're the one panicking and selling, you're the one transferring wealth. If you're the one calmly buying, you're the one receiving it. Let's talk about what Rockefeller did that you can actually apply today, because studying history is worthless if you don't extract lessons. First principle: identify choke points in value chains. Where does value flow, and where can you position yourself to capture a percentage of that flow? You don't need to drill for oil. You need to find the equivalent of refining in your domain. What's the process that everyone needs but nobody controls efficiently? Second principle: optimize relentlessly. Rockefeller's refineries were more efficient than competitors, not by a little, but by multiples. He examined every single cost and reduced it. Barrel costs, labor costs, waste reduction, heat recovery. Everything was measured and optimized. What in your business or career can you optimize to be twice as efficient as others? Third principle: create dependency. How can you make yourself indispensable? What skills, relationships, or systems can you develop where others need you more than you need them? Fourth principle: reinvest profits. Rockefeller didn't extract wealth and spend it. He extracted wealth and reinvested it to grow the system. Every dollar of profit bought more capacity, more control, more leverage. Your business or career should be a compounding machine, not an ATM. Fifth principle: think in systems, not transactions. One-time deals are for amateurs. Recurring revenue, captured customers, network effects, these are what build empires. How can you create something that generates value repeatedly from a single initial effort? Sixth principle, control distribution. Rockefeller understood that controlling how products reach customers is more valuable than making the products. This is why Amazon is more valuable than the brands it sells. Distribution is power. How can you control access to your market? Seventh principle, use leverage aggressively. Capital, labor, and systems. How can you multiply your effort through other people's money, other people's time, and automated systems? Eighth principle, be patient during accumulation, aggressive during opportunity. Spend decades building resources and capabilities. Then when crisis hits and assets are cheap, deploy everything. Ninth principle, ignore social approval. Rockefeller was hated. Didn't matter. He wasn't optimizing for popularity. He was optimizing for power and wealth. What are you sacrificing because you care what others think? 10th principle, think generationally. What you're building should outlast you. Rockefeller's wealth still exists through foundations and trusts. What are you creating that will compound for decades after you're gone? Now let's address the elephant in the room. Rockefeller's tactics were legal in his time, but created such massive inequality and abuse that laws were passed specifically to prevent anyone from doing what he did again. Antitrust laws, labor protections, financial regulations all exist because of robber barons like Rockefeller. So you can't literally replicate his strategy, but you can replicate the principles in legal ways. You can build systems that create value and capture percentage of that value. You can optimize processes to be significantly more efficient than competitors. You can create network effects and switching costs that make you indispensable. You can use leverage to multiply your efforts. You can think long-term and act decisively during crisis. All of this is legal, ethical, and powerful. The specific tactics change, but the strategy is timeless. Here's what's insane. Rockefeller's story has been public for over a century. Every detail is documented. Business schools teach case studies on Standard Oil. And yet, almost nobody applies the lessons. Why? Because it requires doing things that feel wrong in the moment. Living below your means feels like deprivation. Thinking 10 years ahead feels pointless when you have bills this month. Building systems feels slower than just earning money directly. Optimizing processes feels boring compared to chasing the next opportunity. Being patient during accumulation feels like wasting time while others get ahead. This is why 99% of people stay poor or middle class. They optimize for feeling good today, rather than being powerful tomorrow. They choose consumption over investment. They choose comfort over growth. They choose social approval over strategic positioning. And then they wonder why a tiny percentage controls almost everything. Let me give you a modern example. There's an entrepreneur who started a software company. Instead of selling software directly, he built a platform where others could sell their software, and he took 20% of every transaction. He didn't have to create thousands of products. He created one system and captured percentage of everyone else's efforts. In 5 years, this platform did $1 billion in transaction volume. He personally made $200 million from his percentage. Meanwhile, the software creators on his platform made good money, but nothing approaching his wealth. Why? Because they were participants in the system. He owned the system. This is Rockefeller's principle applied to the digital age. The platform is the modern equivalent of the refinery. The software creators are the modern equivalent of oil drillers. Same game, different century. So what do you do with this information? First, stop trading time for money as your primary strategy. That's a trap that guarantees mediocrity. Second, identify what system you can build or control in your domain. What's the equivalent of the refinery in your industry? Third, start building that system even if it pays less initially than just doing client work or holding a job. The job is temporary cash flow. The system is permanent wealth. Fourth, optimize whatever you're building to be dramatically better than alternatives. Not 10% better, 10 times better. Fifth, create switching costs and network effects. Make it expensive or difficult for people to leave once they're in your system. Sixth, reinvest every dollar back into the system until it's mature. Live on minimum, invest maximum. Seventh, be prepared to work on this for a decade before seeing massive results. Rockefeller spent 15 years building before he dominated. Eighth, when crisis comes, double down while others retreat. This is when you make leaps that would take decades in normal times. Ninth, ignore people who call you obsessed, crazy, or ruthless. They're not playing the same game. 10th, study Rockefeller, Carnegie, Vanderbilt, Ford. Not to worship them, but to extract principles. These men understood power in ways most people never will. John D. Rockefeller died in 1937 at age 97. He gave away over $550 million during his lifetime, which is about $11 billion today, and still died the richest man in history. His foundation still exists and has given away over $14 billion since his death. Love him or hate him, you cannot deny that he understood wealth creation at a level that almost nobody else has matched. The question isn't whether his methods were moral by today's standards. The question is, what principles did he understand that you're ignoring? He saw systems where others saw transactions. He saw decades where others saw quarters. He saw percentages where others saw wages. He saw power where others saw money. And that shift in perception made all the difference. You now see what Rockefeller saw. The question is, will you act on it or go back to sleep? Will you build systems or stay trapped in someone else's? Will you think in decades or stay stuck in today? Most people will close this video and change nothing. They'll stay blind by choice. But if you're part of the 1% who actually applies this, who starts building instead of just consuming, who thinks like an owner instead of a participant, your life will never be the same. Share this with someone who's ready to see reality clearly. Subscribe because we don't teach you how to get rich quick. We teach you how to build power that lasts. The choice is yours. See this or stay blind. Rockefeller showed the road. Walking it is up to you.